What creates allegiance to leadership? What is it that leaders do that make people want to help, want to serve, want to accomplish the leadership agenda? What is it? Turns out there's 4 things. They fit the acronym REAL. What people need is trust in order to give commitment. And that's what followers do. Give commitment. And what generates trust is to be reliable and to be ethical. And what creates commitment is when leaders are authentic and, yes, like Herb Kelleher, loving. A one-dimensional view of human nature, that is, that we are all self-interested, that greed is enough to get us the world we need, because if we compete hard enough, our greed will cancel each other out in the sort of equilibrium of not quite enoughness and always striving for more. The libertarian ideal. Is that the best we can do? Are people one-dimensional? Is greed the only thing that drives us? Is self-interest the only thing that captures our imagination? More money and more stuff, more power, more status? That's the only thing? That view of human nature is unsustainable in the world that we are now in. So what is the ethical standard? And here's the ethical standard that I just want you to consider. The highest ethical standard that I am aware of in philosophy is do not cause avoidable suffering. Some suffering is unavoidable. It is part of the human condition. Much suffering is avoidable, particularly if leaders have a moral imagination. Now let's make this practical. If we look at switching costs as a way to evaluate suffering, and you look at stakeholders and evaluate their switching costs, go with me down this journey. A shareholder is a stakeholder. They're an owner of a share or many, many thousands or millions of shares in a company. If they don't like your company, their switching cost is almost zero. They can either execute a trade online or call their broker, and they can be into another company, and there's thousands of companies they can invest in. Overnight, instantaneously. Now let's think of your customers. The switching cost for a customer is a little bit greater. Even if you're a packaged good, even if you just make soap. If you really like this brand of soap, I just love my Dove, and you quit making Dove, oh, that's inconvenient. I've got to find something. I've got to experiment with all these other soaps, find out what I like, doesn't make my face turn into a rash or whatever it is. So it's a little bit, the switching cost for a customer is a little bit greater. Now let's take employees. The 2 greatest sources of sustained depression in the United States of America are losing your job and divorce. It takes longer to overcome the emotional debris of both those events than any other thing. So what's the switching cost of an employee? Gosh, I got great news. We just sold our company. And I'm doing great, but you're out of a job. Not only my income, my lifestyle, my tribal joy that I had with my coworkers is dashed, but in this economy, I never know if I'm going to find a job that pays as well or that is close to my home. So I might have to move my kids. I might have to take a job that doesn't pay as well. I might have to have my spouse work at a different job that's more higher paying or less satisfying. You see, my cavalier approach to my employees, I cause immense suffering. 54 million people have been laid off since 1979. And while we're at it, think of the switching costs children have in divorce. Think of that disruption. Yet, for the last 15 years, layoffs have been a strategy, a way to increase productivity. I'm not talking about layoffs like, well, we were so dumb we lost the business and now we're going to have to lay people off. Kodak is the poster child for that. We'll have tens of thousands of people because they couldn't figure out digital photography was going to become popular. So now the only way to compete is to send all those jobs to China. Yeah, that's a failure of leadership, sustained leadership. Well, that's bad. But I'll tell you what's really bad is if we can figure out a way to downsize just to increase share price, we'll get a little quick run-up on productivity numbers, hit the share, And of course, I've got a big bunch of options that I can sell. Think that's okay? Cause that much suffering? So you can have a little bit more of what you don't need? Are we going to stand for that? Is that the best we can do? Well, in the research of Gen 21, this is what they say. We don't want leaders who create organizations whose success and longevity are based on exploiting labor, damaging the environment, or ignoring my family. And there's not just a few of these that feel this way. It is the ethos of the generation. They want new answers. They are willing to create new answers, like Kim did in her organization, to get a better world. And the question for boomers is, are you willing to participate? The logic of self-interest is too limiting. Our world is too complicated for that to be a serious consideration. We need to have a new logic. I call it the logic of civilization. We live in a time of economic barbarism, economic Darwinism. And whether, as leaders of the future, you are committed to the logic of civilization, to creating a world that your children can actually enjoy living in, is up to us. Let's make it simple: purpose, people, profit.